Before I die, I want to be tried for piracy. Before I die, I want to straddle the international dateline. Before I die, I want to sing for millions. Before I die, I want to plant a tree. Before I die, I want to live off the grid. Before I die, I want to hold her one more time.
Before I die, it was a project that had been talked about. It was also one of those interesting things where you see the benefits of social media. The planning director for the city of Raleigh, Mitchell Silver, had happened to hear about this particular project, and he tweeted to my Twitter account to say, hey, Kim, you need to check into this. Check out this Before I Die project with Candy Chang.
The idea came from Candy Chang. I actually saw it on Twitter, and it's through friends of mine, Project for Public Space, started just tweeting it, and when I looked into it, it just seemed like a very cool and exciting project.
I had heard some about it, but not a lot. So I went and looked it up, and it was just fascinating, because what it was this artist in New Orleans, Candy Chang, who had a friend, a loved one who had passed away, and a way for her to get over the grieving, to help with that process, was to essentially take the side of a building and stencil up on the side of it, before I die, I want to blank line.
In 2009, I lost someone I loved very much. Her name was Joan, and she was a mother to me. And her death was sudden and unexpected. So this neglected space became a constructive one, and people's hopes and dreams made me laugh out loud, tear up, and they consoled me during my own tough times. Together, we've shown how powerful our public spaces can be if we're given the opportunity to have a voice and share more with one another.
With this project, they kind of came with what they wanted it to do. And I think, my part was to kind of problem solve that in terms of putting it together and then kind of create a way that would be the easiest to set it up and then to break it down. The hard part is it's going to be up there just clean. And, putting those first few marks on is going to be the toughest part. Once it gets going, I think it'll just be kind of, a mess, beautiful mess.
Well, of course, there's two different perceptions to think of there. Like, this is a very temporary project, but it's that public participation that I think, it's a collaboration that is unknown. You kind of open the door to let people find themselves in the project, and it helps us find our way to newer ideas and things like that. As far as a sense of place, per festival or something like that, it's an activity. It's something that kind of sparks ideas. This one particularly, self-reflection, what life is, what does it mean, in that sense of, what do you expect, I guess, of yourself and of the world and your participation in those kinds of situations.
I did not expect it to be the thing where people just stayed and stayed and stayed. So the Saturday morning, it was like a 9 o'clock Saturday morning, we showed up with our different walls that we needed to install. And what I realized right away is people stayed and watched as we were building it. This is before one thing had been written on the wall. They were just standing, staring, and waiting to see this project unfold. Some folks would stand there, watch others while they were writing. Some folks would get their little thought in and take off. Like that, they didn't want to stay. What would happen is the walls would fill up very quickly. And as soon as it did, there was sort of like this slowing down of the writing, and then people would just stand and watch, engage, and see what other people were writing. They would take their pictures by it, a lot of that. And then we would take these sponges and wipe it down, and we couldn't even, people wouldn't even wait for the walls to dry. They had to get back up there and start writing all over again. And we saw some fascinating stuff, very intriguing words. We saw some of the same repeating But then you saw some that were just totally and completely out there.
In our age of increasing distractions, it's more important than ever to find ways to maintain perspective and remember that life is brief and tender. Death is something that we're often discouraged to talk about or even think about, but I've realized that preparing for death is one of the most empowering things you can do. Thinking about death clarifies your life.
One particularly intriguing one is that an individual kept writing, or multiple individuals, we don't know, something that was very simple in the beginning to those of us who were observing, which is, before I die, I want to live. Well, sounds pretty common. You know, you write that, pretty profound, pretty simple, you go with it. But what would happen is that it would be written once, and that would be it on that wall. We would wipe down the wall, and mysteriously it would show up again. And so those of us who were there, staff and volunteering, we started to try to figure out and track who was doing this, who kept coming back every time we wiped down the wall and writing it again. And we never did find out. And it always seemed to be somewhere perhaps in the upper right of a wall or the upper left of a wall. And when it would go up really within minutes after the walls were cleared off. So, you know, it might sound as if it was common, but I think for us it became something that was very profound.
Public art is a key thing for a city to have. It not only showcases the sort of energy and spirit of a city, it's a way to show your civic pride, and it's also a way to let people know it's great to be creative and that humans are capable of wonderful things.
So public art has become this popular thing now. So it's a good thing. And may it spread, you know, let it not just end here, let's just continue to do great stuff.
Before I die, I want to be a great father.
Before I die, I want to celebrate my life.
Before I die, I'd like to circumvent the globe in a ship.
Before I die, I want to find all the dinosaur bones.
Before I die, I want to live.
Before I die, I want to live my life for Christ.
Before I die, I would like to visit a place where everyone's happy.
Before I die, I want to travel to space.
Before I die, I want to drink champagne and eat escargot in Paris.
I think I would just say that before I die, I want to make a difference. And I want to be part of how awesome the world is.
It's so funny because when you ask that of other people, you expect them to have an answer right away. And then when you get asked yourself, it's not so easy. The most obvious thing would be to say something like, before I die, I want to see my grandchildren graduate from high school. But I thought about that for a little bit, and I realized in order for me to do something like that, I would probably write something that says, before I die, I want to make sure I don't waste each and every day. And I think that'll sort of cover that, many, many other desires that I would put up there on the wall.